And welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us now is our friend. He's the executive director of the Investigative Project on Terrorism. You know him, you love him, Steve Emerson. Hey, Steve, how are you?
I don't know about loving me, but
I didn't say I love you. I said you know him, you love him. So I'm secure within my own sexuality. Anyway,
not that there would be anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's right. So just quote Jerry Seinfeld and Friends. Okay, so we got a lot to talk about here. And first of all, let's start with this phony notion put forth not only at the UN by Barack Obama, but subsequently when he called the Iranian president and he talked about this, how he has confidence that a solution here could be found with Iran. And one of the reasons he cites is because the Ayatollah issued a fatwa against nuclear weapons, against Iran having nuclear weapons. Now, first of all, tell the folks what a fatwa is, and then tell the folks how this is just pure and utter fiction.
A fatwa is a religious decree, and it was alleged that, and Obama made the statement at the UN, that the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, issued a fatwa several years ago, against the use of nuclear weapons. And Memory, which is a fantastic organization, did a whole investigation and found that it didn't exist. It never was made.
Right. They translate into English all the rantings and ravings of the radical Islamists.
Right. The point is that it just didn't exist. And then there were people who tried to maintain that it was orally communicated, but fatwas cannot be orally communicated. So
they must be written.
Yeah. So maybe this was invisible ink, or it was mentally communicated, or it came from aliens. Who knows?
You never know, and that leads me to my next point. And by the way, Caroline Glick mentioning the same thing, and others that this thing just does not exist. But hey, this is Barack Obama who opens his mouth, and very often you could keep your doctor if you like him. What else could I say? Now, then there's John Kerry. Now, John Kerry, even before Obama made the phone call, when he sat there, Kerry, with his counterpart from Iran, with the other nations, the 4 or 5 other nations, he immediately said, I think we could wind up lifting the sanctions in a very short time, relatively speaking. And now he went even further, right?
Yeah, he said we could wrap it up in 6 months. Wrap it up in 6 months. I mean, here you had actually Khamenei yesterday calling for the destruction of Israel. CNN lied, deliberately and outrageously lied in mistranslating what Rouhani said, claiming that Rouhani condemned the Holocaust. He never even mentioned the Holocaust. The Iranians have refused anything substantively in terms of opening up their facilities to the IAEA. The only thing that was done was that there was a telephone call, and he didn't say, I want to destroy Israel. That was it. Okay? And suddenly there's a love affair going on.
Yeah, well, it puts Israel in a really no-win position. I think Barack Obama has found a way to stick it to Israel, because how are they going to bomb Iran? Now they can't count on any support from the United States. In fact, quite the opposite. Warnings from the United States. We're negotiating with them. We're going to do it through peaceful means. Don't you dare. And what's Netanyahu going to do? And all the while, Obama has to know he's going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And if Israel doesn't like it, that's too bad. I think he's found a way to really stick it to them.
Well, he has found a way. I mean, by saying we could wrap it up in 6 months. I mean, and by saying that the only and Kerry also said, well, we only want a diplomatic solution. I mean, he's taking, even though Obama ritually says all, options are on the table, it's like that non-existent fatwa. It doesn't carry any weight, especially when we saw what he did with Syria.
Yeah, well, of course, that's another losing game. We're talking to Steve Emerson here on the Steve Malzberg Show. I want to ask you a question. What the heck's wrong with John McCain? He has now hired a woman named Elizabeth Obagi, or Obagi, whichever, who was fired from her post at the Institute for the Study of War after it was learned that she had reportedly falsified her claim of having received a PhD from Georgetown University. And this is a so-called Syrian expert whose work has been cited by the likes of John Kerry, John McCain, as they argued for international intervention into Syria.
Yeah, well, she allegedly, was cited because she claimed falsely that most of the rebels in Syria were peace-loving pluralists, when in fact most of them are jihadists. And turns out she worked for the Syrian Emergency Task Force, which is a group largely composed of Muslim Brotherhood or Hamas activists. And they have a vested interest in misrepresenting the constituency, making up the rebels, because they want the money coming from the state. They've gotten $3 million from the State Department, and I'm sure they didn't spend it on weapons. They sent it on, on nice comfort creatures. So the fact is that she comes from a disgraced background. She lied about her own credentials. She lied about the actual makeup, the whole analysis. She vouched for an actual terrorist who is charged with providing material support to Al-Qaeda. And then she signed a plea agreement to a lesser charge and sentenced to time served and was released. Now, John McCain...
But there's one more. She also, maybe you mentioned this, didn't she? She served as political director for the Syrian Emergency Task Force,
yes,
which is a nonprofit rebel support group.
Well, it's a group made up largely of Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas.
There you go.
Yep. And it totally discredited.
And then John McCain hires her.
Well, listen, not only that, but I don't know if you remember this. About 2 weeks ago, he was on Fox and Friends.
Oh, when he said, are you going to tell me when he said,
Allahu Akbar,
Akbar is just
thank God,
thank God.
Right.
We played the bite with him and Brian Kilmeade. Yeah, just total insanity. Total insanity. All right, one more for you here. Speaking of total insanity, I have asked the question over and over and over and over, almost rhetorically, because I think I know deep in my heart what the answer is. But why has this administration remained silent while Christians are being killed all over the Middle East and all over Africa, day by day? Churches burned, churches bombed, schools burned, schools bombed, people beheaded, and we say nothing as a country. And then one of the reasons here, one of the indications, is a man that Janet Napolitano appointed to the Homeland Security Department before she left, and some of his outrageous statements, including blaming the cops in Egypt for their own persecution.
Right.
You know who I'm talking about? Yes, Mohammed Ali Biari.
Who has a history, in fact, history of actually... He actually went to a commemoration for Ayatollah Khomeini. He has openly stated that the Holy Land Foundation was an injustice, that is, the prosecution and conviction of Hamas terrorists. He has supported the Muslim Brotherhood, and yet he was appointed by Janet Napolitano to the elite counterterrorism advisory panel and actually given a security clearance. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up.
No, and if America only knew. If America, imagine, let's live in a fantasy world for a second, Steve. Just this story alone. Just imagine if somehow they all took drugs and CNN, MSNBC, ABC, and they all led with this one night. America would be outraged, but they're never going to hear about it, most of them, because most of them don't even know what Obamacare is.
Listen, the fact is that this administration, and together with the media, there was only one brief interlude when the media wasn't on the Teflon side, is when the AP search warrants were issued, and then the media said, well, he's not our friend, but that lasted for about a month.
Yeah.
So otherwise, they've been protecting him. They, as you pointed out, they don't describe the whole attack on Christians. In fact, I don't know who did that story. It was a very famous story right after the story about Al-Shabaab killing all the people at the mall, where 92 out of 100 newspapers didn't even use the word Islamic.
Oh, yeah. That was, I know Newsbusters picked it up. Either they wrote it or picked it up. Absolutely. I think the New York Times was that mall massacre shows resurgence of terror group. And that was the headline.
That was the headline, right. That was
good for them. Hey, they're coming back.
Right.
Oh, my gosh. Steve, we live in a
and it gets worse because we don't use the word radical Islam. In fact, in the president's speech, what he said, something that people at the UN, he said that the solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is going to solve basically all of our problems and help solve the Iran problem. What is he, crazy? Iran is not going to be satisfied with the existence of an Israeli state. Neither will most of the Muslim countries. They're never going to accept the notion of an existence of Israel. That's number one. Number two, the fact that he would say that this is going to resolve the conflict buys into the absolute ludicrous notion that this is the core of the problem. The core of the problem is the Arab rejection of Israel, the refusal to accept it as a Jewish state, and the notion that they all believe in of the right of return, that all Palestinians have the right to reinvade Israel and destroy it.
Right. Well, I've always known, and I've always said, and I've always felt, I should say, not known, can't know, that Barack Obama has, let's put it this way, absolutely no love for the state of Israel. He's the only quote-unquote imperialist nation, including ours, that he could really do anything directly to, although he's destroying this one. But he can't do anything to Great Britain, really, so he's taking everything he can out on Israel. But anyway, for another time, Steve Emerson, the executive director of the Investigative Project on Terrorism, thank you as always, my friend.
You're very welcome.
Take
Steve.
care. All right, folks, it's crazy. It's insane. Yeah, John Kerry thinks we could wrap this up in 6 months. And then Israel, you have to accept the fact that we wrapped it up in 6 months. And your future will be in danger, in doubt. You'll be living with a nuclear Iran. The whole world will. But hey, John Kerry wrapped it up in 6 months. Barack Obama will get the Nobel Peace Prize again. And that's what it's all about. And we have Islamists in the Homeland Security Department who blame Christians for their own death. It's a wonderful world. Welcome to the Abomination. Love to hear from you. 855-777-9660. 855-777-9660 on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.